Two crippled teenage boys were kicked out of car dealership. Next day, billionaire dad's two Lamborghinis arrives. Two crippled teenage boys walked into a luxury car dealership wearing combat shorts and plain black t-shirts. They approached a high-end car, asking a few questions. The salesman looked them up and down with disdain. "I think you're in the wrong place," he sneered. "These cars start at $800,000. Before we go further, please ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories like this one. Laughter echoed from staff and customers. Humiliated, the boys quietly left. The next morning, two Lamborghinis pulled up outside the dealership. As the back door opened, the same crippled boys stepped out, rolling their wheelchairs, followed by their father in a tailored suit. The salesman watched, stunned. He never saw it coming. It was a normal day for the showroom until two crippled teenage boys in wheelchairs appeared at the entrance. Their arrival was almost silent, the only sound being the light squeak of bike tires as they coasted into view. They were dressed in combat shorts, plain black t-shirts, and sneakers scuffed from real use. No designer labels, no Rolex watches, just youthful curiosity and the kind of wide-eyed wonder that could only come from dreams that hadn't yet been stomped out by the world. They rolled in, the glass doors parting with a soft whoosh. Their faces lit up instantly, soaking in every shimmer of automotive perfection before them. Sleek curves, oversized wheels, gleaming emblems. They didn't run. They didn't act out. They didn't even touch anything. They simply stood there gazing. One of them finally turned to his brother and whispered, "That's it. That's the one." The car he pointed at was a deep midnight blue hypercar that looked like it belonged on the cover of a magazine. It was beauty sculpted into metal and speed, one of only a few in the country. The price tag over $800,000. As they moved closer to admire it, a voice cut through the air, sharp, clipped, and condescending. "Can I help you?" The boys turned. A salesman in a tailored navy suit approached, adjusting his cuff links. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine. His hair gelled back just enough to look effortless. He was everything they weren't. Refined, well-dressed, smug. He looked them over slowly, eyes dropping to their clothes and sneakers, then rising back up to their faces. "I'm sorry," he said, his lips curling into a smirk, "but I think you're in the wrong place." One of the boys blinked. "We were just wondering if these vehicles start at $800,000. The salesman interrupted, enunciating each word as if he were speaking to someone who didn't understand English. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable elsewhere." Behind him, a few other staff members chuckled under their breath. A couple seated at a nearby desk, clearly in the middle of a sale, looked over and gave a small, patronizing shake of their heads. The boys' smiles vanished. The younger one looked down at the floor. The older one gave a polite, if slightly awkward, nod. "Sorry to bother you," he muttered, turning to leave. They rolled their wheelchairs out slowly, their shoulders just a bit lower than when they had walked in. The glass doors whispered shut behind them. And that should have been the end of it. Another forgettable moment in a day filled with sales quotas, espresso shots, and carefully curated smiles. But then, something unexpected happened. Just as the boys were about to go away, a voice called out from behind them. "Wait!" They turned. A woman stepped out from the shadows of a nearby desk, her expression warm but firm. She wore a red blouse and white slacks with her hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. There was something different about her. No smugness. No sales pitch, just sincerity. "Do you have a minute?" she asked. The boys exchanged glances, hesitated, then rolled their wheelchairs back and stepped inside again. She met them near the car they had been admiring. "I heard you asking about this model," she said, her tone gentle but professional. "It's one of the finest in our lineup. Let me walk you through some of its features." The boys lit up again, curiosity returning like the sun after a cloud passed. She crouched slightly so she could speak to them at eye level. She talked about the engine specs, the customization options, the technology built into the interior. She handed them brochures, pointing out what each part meant. They listened intently, asked thoughtful questions, not about the price, but about the engineering, the design, the legacy behind the brand. She noticed. Most people didn't even care about those things. "Do you want to sit in it?" she offered. Their eyes widened. "Seriously?" one asked. She nodded carefully, respectfully. The boys took turns sitting inside the car, as she helped to lift them out of their wheelchairs. No wild movements, no selfies, just quiet appreciation. When they stepped out, she handed them her business card. "If you ever have more questions, you can call me directly," she said with a smile. "You're always welcome here." They thanked her with a mix of humility and awe, then rolled away, this time with their heads held a little higher. The sales floor returned to normal. The smug salesman from earlier leaned over to a coworker and muttered, wasting her time. She heard him, but she didn't care. Something about those boys stuck with her. Maybe it was the way they asked questions most adults didn't. Maybe it was the quiet confidence they carried beneath the awkwardness. Or maybe it was just the simple fact that they reminded her of a time when she had been underestimated, too. The day ended, lights dimmed, doors locked, but the story wasn't over with its expansive glass walls, sleek architecture, and manicured gardens. It was the kind of home that whispered wealth instead of shouting it. The late afternoon sun painted the interior in shades of gold and amber. Light filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows, touching the polished marble floors and the custom artwork that adorned the walls. The stillness inside was elegant, intentional, like every corner had been curated, not lived in. And then the front doors opened. Two teenage boys stepped in their wheelchairs, their sneakers tootling softly against the floor as they carried the weight of something heavier than a bad day. Combat shorts, plain black t-shirts, and lingering silence followed them into the foyer. The older brother closed the door behind them and paused, his fingers tightening around the straps of his backpack. The younger one took a deep breath, then exhaled through his nose like he was still trying to shake the feeling off his skin. "Where's Dad?" he asked, his voice low. "Probably in the study," the older replied. "Come on." They walked past the modern chandelier that hung like a floating sculpture, past the hallway where classical piano music often drifted out. There, at the far end of the hallway, sat a set of heavy oak doors, opened just a crack. Inside, their father sat behind a grand piano, the kind you see only on stages or in mansions like this one. He wasn't playing, just sitting. The lid was open and a tumbler of something amber rested on the corner, untouched. He wasn't the kind of man you interrupted, not out of fear, but out of respect. He carried presents like other men carried wallets, always with him, never forced. He looked up as his sons entered. "Back already?" he asked. The boys nodded. He studied them for a moment longer. "Everything all right?" The older brother opened his mouth to say yes. The automatic response, but stopped. "No," he said quietly. "Not really." Their father motioned to the leather armchairs near the fireplace. "Sit." For a moment, silence filled the room like mist. The father swirled the drink in his glass, set it down without taking a sip, and turned his chair slightly toward them. "Tell me what happened." It came out in pieces at first, halting, hesitant. The kind of story you tell when you're unsure if you're overreacting or if what you experienced really was as humiliating as it felt. The older brother spoke first. "We went to the dealership, the one downtown, the exotic one." Their father nodded slowly, but said nothing. "We just wanted to look at the name of car we'd seen online. We weren't messing around. We were polite, just curious." "Then what?" their father asked. The younger brother took over. "One of the salesmen looked at us like we were dirt. He basically told us to leave. Said we were in the wrong place. He even laughed and said the car started at $800,000. People around us laughed, too." He looked down at his hands. It was embarrassing. The words settled in the air like smoke. No one moved. But the older one added quickly, "There was a woman who worked there. She saw us and came over after the others brushed us off. She was actually nice. Showed us the specs, handed us brochures, treated us like we mattered." Their father leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking slightly under his weight. His expression hadn't changed. No flash of anger, no furrow of disapproval. Just calm, focused. "Did she know who you were?" he asked. The older brother shook his head. "No, we didn't say our last name." "Smart," the father murmured more to himself than them. Another pause. Then the younger one asked quietly, "Why do people treat you different based on what you're wearing?" Their father looked over at him. "Because people often confuse appearance with value. And that tells you more about them than it ever does about you." The boy nodded slowly, chewing on the thought. Then the room fell silent again. The father stood and walked to the window. He stared out at the sun beginning its descent over the horizon, hands clasped behind his back. For a long time, he said nothing. Then without turning he spoke. "Thank you for telling me." That was it. No fury, no immediate action, just 5 words said with such composed clarity, it almost made the moment feel heavier. The older brother looked at the younger, unsure what to say next. But there was nothing left to say. They had shared their story, and their father had heard it, not with outrage, but with attention. And somehow that was enough. Dinner that night was unusually quiet. The long mahogany table stretched far too wide for just 3 people, but the family always sat close together. Plates were set with precision. The brothers picked at their food, glancing occasionally at their father. He ate like he always did, slow, methodical, present. At one point, the older brother cleared his throat. "You're not mad." Their father didn't look up from his plate. At whom? The salesman. The people who laughed. He placed his fork down gently, then looked up. "I don't waste anger on people who show me who they are. I pay attention, and then I act when it matters." He went back to his meal. After dinner, the brothers went to their rooms. Upstairs, the younger one turned to his older brother as they passed in the hallway. "Do you think he'll do something?" The older one smiled. "You don't know Dad by now." The next morning would bring an answer they never expected. Downstairs in the privacy of his study, the father made a quiet phone call. "Yes," he said into the phone. "I need both cars delivered here by 8 a.m. tomorrow. No delays." He paused, listening. "No, not the usual delivery. Have the drivers wait outside the dealership. I want the timing to be precise." Another pause, then softly. "It's time they remember not everyone who looks ordinary is." He ended the call, set the phone down, and leaned back in his chair. His sons had been judged by what they wore. He was about to remind the world that real power doesn't need to announce itself. It simply arrives. The next morning, dramatic music plays as 2 Lamborghinis, among the most expensive cars in the world, pull up in front of the dealership. They don't drive, they glide. The morning light hits their glossy paint like liquid metal. One is obsidian black with silver trimmings. The other, a deep royal blue with rose gold accents that shimmer in the sun like champagne and crystal. Together, the 2 cars are worth well over $50 million. And yet, the way they arrive, it feels like money isn't even the point. It's about presence. Heads turn instantly. Conversations stop mid-sentence. A young couple touring the showroom pauses as the man slowly lowers his sunglasses. A customer in the lounge spills his espresso as he tries to get to the window. Even the cleaning staff halt, eyes widening in disbelief. Phones came out. Whispers spread. "Is that a boat tail?" "No way. 2 of them." "Who the hell are they?" Staff and customers swarm to the massive glass front of the dealership like moths to a flame. Some stare in silence. Some record in disbelief. No one moves closer. Then the doors open. From the back seat of the royal blue boat tail, 2 crippled teenage boys step out wearing the exact same combat shorts and black t-shirts they wore the day before. Their presence is calm, not cocky, not flashy, just cannered. They look around like they've been here before, and they have, only this time. They're not asking for permission to admire the cars inside. They rolled around to the front of the black boat tail, just as the second rear door opens. And then he steps out. Their father. He's dressed in a sharply tailored dark gray suit, the kind that makes its own statement without needing a brand logo. His posture is flawless. His expression unreadable, his pace unhurried. He adjusts his cufflinks not for show, but because he expects precision in every part of his life. The moment he sets foot on the dealership pavement, everything around him shifts. He doesn't walk in. He arrives. Inside the dealership, the arrogant salesman from the day before sees them. He had been laughing with a coworker just moments ago, retelling the story of those 2 scruffy kids who thought they could afford an $800,000 hyperarch. Now laughter catches in his throat. His eyes widen. He stares at the 2 crippled boys, then at the man who follows behind them. Recognition sets in like ice on his spine. And then fear. He tries to compose himself, wiping his sweaty palms on his pants, adjusting his tie, straightening his posture. His smirk disappears as he meets the father's gaze, but it's too late. He never saw it coming. The glass doors open as the trio steps inside, and the entire atmosphere of the showroom thickens. The once silent crowd inside parts instinctively, like royalty just entered. The father walks to the reception desk with his sons behind him. Calm, collected, controlled. "I'd like to speak to the staff member who assisted my sons yesterday," he says to the receptionist. The woman at the desk looks stunned. She blinks. "Why, yes, sir. One moment, please." The arrogant salesman steps forward quickly, his voice suddenly upbeat. "Sir, that was actually me." The father cuts him off with one look. "No," he says coldly. "You weren't the one who helped them." The man falters, "But I." The father turns to the dealership manager who had been observing cautiously from behind a glass office wall. I believe your security cameras recorded yesterday's interactions. The manager nods slowly. Yes, sir. We archive everything. The father speaks clearly, his voice low but firm enough for the entire staff to hear. Then I'd suggest you review the footage before this conversation continues. The manager vanishes into his office without another word. The silence that follows is deafening. The staff whisper among themselves, now realizing exactly who these boys are. The teenage brothers say nothing. They sat still in their wheelchairs, side by side, no longer humiliated, no longer dismissed. In this moment, they are not the children of a billionaire. They are simply young men whose dignity is about to be restored. 2 minutes later, the manager returns. His face is pale. He avoids eye contact with the salesman. He speaks clearly. We reviewed the footage, sir. The father raises an eyebrow. And the staff member who helped your sons yesterday was Emma Jose, he says. And this man, the father asks, gesturing toward the now visibly sweating salesman. The manager clears his throat. He misrepresented the interaction. His behavior was inappropriate and unprofessional. The father turns slowly toward the salesman. You judged my sons the moment they came in their wheelchairs, not based on who they were, but their disabilities. The salesman opens his mouth to speak. Nothing comes out. You laughed at them, mocked them. You turned your nose up because you assumed they didn't belong. And the irony is, you don't belong here. The manager steps forward again. Effective immediately, you're terminated. Gasps ripple through the showroom. The salesman doesn't argue. He doesn't beg. He simply lowers his head, collects his things, and walks out past the very boys he thought were a waste of his time. The father turns back to the manager. Bring me Emma. Moments later, the woman who had spoken kindly to the boys the day before walks out, confused and cautious. When she sees the boys, her face lights up with recognition, but also concern. Is everything okay? She asks. The father smiles for the first time. It's subtle but genuine. More than okay, he says. You treated my sons with respect. You took the time to listen. You gave them your attention when no one else did. She blushes slightly. They were polite, smart. It was a pleasure. He nods, then points toward the hypercar they had admired the day before. They told me they liked that one. The showroom falls completely still. I'd like to purchase 2 of it, he says, turning back to her. Fully loaded. Every feature they mentioned. Added. Her eyes widen. That's over $6 million. He pulls out a pen, then make it 6.2. And make sure the full commission goes to you. He signs the paperwork on the dealership's main counter, right? Where the salesman had laughed the day before. The moment becomes something more than just a transaction. It's a lesson, a reckoning, a reminder. As the paperwork is finalized, the crippled teenage boys rolled around the room looking at the people who had judged them, laughed at them, dismissed them. Now those same people stand quietly, their expressions a mix of shame and awe. The father steps back, holding the keys out to his sons. Happy early birthday. They take the keys with quiet pride. No cheers, no bragging, just quiet victory. They rolled back outside to the Lamborghinis. This time not as the underestimated, but as the unexpected. And as they drive away, all that's left behind is silence and a story no one at that dealership will ever forget. The engine purred like a sleeping lion as the sleek $6 million hypercars rolled away from the dealership's curb. The sunlight danced along its curves, catching flecks of polished chrome and deep, lustrous paint. Behind the wheels sat a composed man in a tailored suit, still and powerful as if the car moved because he allowed it. In the back seat, his 2 sons sat in quiet awe, holding keys that meant so much more than horsepower. The cars disappeared down the tree-lined road, swallowed by the distance. The sound faded. The moment settled inside the dealership. Silence lingered like the echo after a thunderclap. Employees who had laughed the day before now stood speechless, frozen in the wake of what had just happened. A few still held their phones, now forgotten, in their hands. Others simply stood with expressions of quiet disbelief, shaken not by the money, but by the meaning behind it. The manager watched from behind the glass wall of his office, arms folded, his jaw tight with regret. This wasn't just a sale. It was a statement, a moment that would ripple across that dealership and far beyond for years to come. The customer who had smirked as the boys were dismissed now lowered his gaze. The junior salesperson who had laughed along rubbed the back of his neck, shifting awkwardly on his feet. Even the janitor, who had stayed out of the drama entirely, shook his head in silent respect. They had all seen it. The transformation, the twist, the truth. And they would never forget it because this wasn't about a car. It was about how people are treated when no one knows their name. It was about what happens when you confuse modesty for mediocrity and mistake simplicity for insignificance. It was about judgment and kindness. Somewhere in the back, a soft ding echoed from the manager's office. The door opened quietly, and Emma Jose, the woman who had offered help when no one else would step out. Her hair was pulled back. Her blouse was simple. No flashy jewelry, no gloating smile, just grace. In her hand was a neatly folded letter signed and sealed by the dealership's regional director. A quiet promotion, effective immediately. She would now be the senior sales consultant with her own office, her own team, and a place at the decision-making table. She didn't cry. She didn't boast. She simply walked through the showroom with her head held high, past the same coworkers who had questioned her instincts just 24 hours ago. Every step she took said what she didn't have to. Respect isn't demanded. It's earned, and kindness is never wasted. She passed the receptionist, who smiled knowingly. She nodded back. It was all understood without words. In the background, the showroom felt different, quieter. Not because fewer cars were sold that day, but because something human had happened inside a place built to worship machines. Where once there was laughter and arrogance, there was now reflection. A customer asked to speak with Emma directly. A new salesman sat up straighter at his desk. A whispered conversation ended in silence. The camera slowly zooms out, the lens pulling away from the center of the room, capturing its grand design, the elegant lines of parked vehicles, the pristine shine of tile and glass. It pans over an empty desk, the one where the arrogant salesman once stood. Now vacated, a monument to a mistake. His nameplate gone, his absence louder than his voice ever was. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more powerful and thought-provoking content like this. Your support helps us keep sharing stories that not only entertain, but leave a lasting message. We want to hear your thoughts. What did you think about how the two crippled brothers were treated at the dealership? How did you feel when their father showed up the next day in 2 Lamborghinis? Was it the justice they deserved? Did it end the way you expected? Share your thoughts in the comments.